so in the room, we've got Scott Stewart, John Mostow, Mike McCormick, Christian Brock, Allison Schultz, and pretty much almost the entire HR team here at your disposal. And then Diana, can you tell us who we have on the call?
We have Fatima, Karen Griffin, and Vikram.
Karen.
And Kieran.
Oh, hi Kieran.
Yep.
And we've got Dave
Karen.
Logan joining us as well. So is there anybody on the call whose name we did not call?
Karen.
Kara. And is there a, can you guys hear me on the call okay?
Elsie?
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Excellent.
Cozy.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming here this morning to get a preview of what we're going to be presenting to our project managers next week. But this is also relevant for you because I think everybody here will be conducting performance appraisals for your team. So let me start by asking, show of hands, who routinely, as part of their career, have received regular performance appraisals that were on point, effectively written, constructive, useful? We've got one hand and somebody with a little twitch in the elbow, okay. On the other hand, is there anyone who has received an appraisal that was not worth the paper it was printed on, was not effective, was poorly written, or hadn't received them at all? Okay, a lot more hands. So some of the things we're going to cover today, you might feel is common sense. It's true, it's not rocket surgery, but based on this little poll we did right here, it doesn't seem to be very common either. So we are undertaking to make some real cultural changes within Longview, and this is a great opportunity for us to affect those changes and to have an immediate impact. So before we dive into the material, one more bit of audience participation. If you would, take a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to give you a little quiz. I want you to make 2 columns. And there's pen and paper on the table there. 2 columns. The left column labeled me. The right column labeled team. And I want you to number down the side 1 through 12. Alright, so we have 2 columns, one labeled me, one labeled team. We've numbered down the side 1 through 12. I'm going to read 12 statements, and I want you to answer whether these are true or false for yourself, and then what you think your team's answer would be to these statements as well. Everybody understand? Nodding? Yes, I know it's early. Okay. Number 1, I know what is expected of me at work. True or false? Number 2, I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. Number 3, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Number 4, in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. Number 5, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Number 6, there is someone at work who encourages my development. All right, we're halfway through. Number 7, at work, my opinions seem to count. Number 8, the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. Number 9, my associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. Number 10, I have a best friend at work. Or work spouse, as Terry calls him. Number 11, in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. And number 12, this last year, I have had opportunities at work to learn and grow. Okay, so go ahead and turn these over. We'll get back to these in just a minute. And I want to clarify that today we're going to be talking about performance management, not just performance appraisals. We will be having a tool training to show you how to use the self-service tool to check the boxes and conduct the appraisal. But an appraisal in a performance management process is kind of like the commencement at graduation. Performance management encompasses all of the college experience. So that's what we're going to talk about today, everything leading up to the performance appraisal. Performance appraisal is a one-time, static snapshot. Very often it feels labor-intensive, and it looks back over a long period of time. Performance management, on the other hand, Diana, is an iterative process. It is an ongoing, dynamic process that is meant to improve performance and engage employees. It's something that needs to happen year-round, and it begins with setting expectations, giving feedback relative to those expectations, and periodically conducting an appraisal that gives you that documentation, that snapshot. So that's performance management. Let's ask the question. Go ahead, Diana. There you go. Why do people quit? Or why do people not give 100% on the job? Why do they disengage? What have you guys experienced? Why do people leave?
They get lost.
They get lost? Okay, what do you mean?
Sweet.
There's candy for those who
You
participate,
keep
by the
coming
way.
with the candy, you're gonna keep getting answers.
All right, they get lost?
Yeah, they kind of lose sight of what their role is, and they start feeling marginalized or unimportant.
Okay, they feel marginalized, they don't necessarily understand their role relative to the organization's role. Why else do people leave?
Concerns over job security.
Job security? Okay, no candy for you, so. I'm not a very good throw. Anybody else, reasons why people leave or don't give 100% on the job?
Get a better offer, not take a chance.
They got a better offer. Okay, very good. So there's lots of reasons why people may not engage. And the Gallup organization went through 25 years of research and 1 million surveys and over 100 million survey questions to find those factors that contribute to employee engagement. And those are the 12 questions that I read to you, the G12. So Gallup determined that these are the factors that determine whether an employee is engaged and giving their best performance. Employees who can answer affirmatively to these questions lead to organizations who have the best business outcomes. So let me just ask, look at the list that you completed for yourself. Did anybody get 12 true statements? Anybody say yes to all 12 for themselves? Anybody get 11? Anybody get 10? Allison got 10. Okay, kick cat for Allison. She's officially the most engaged person in this room. That's fantastic. Let me just say, as the leadership team of this organization, I would argue that we have influence over every single one of these for our employees. As managers, we have direct and immediate influence over at least 6 of them. So if you look at the next slide, the ones I've highlighted in green, these are factors that we can influence for our employees today. I know what's expected of me at work. In the last 7 days, I received recognition. Someone at work cares about me as a person. Someone encourages my development. My opinions seem to count. And in the last 6 months, someone has talked to me about my progress. That's something that we can do today to affect our organization and our employees. I won't ask you about how you responded for your team, but go back and take a look at that and see what can you change today to get more affirmative responses for that. So the first step in an ongoing performance management process is to set expectations. I think Dilbert captures it well here. How are you doing on your unspoken objectives? My what? I'm referring to the goals I have in my mind that I've never mentioned. How are those going? I'm totally nailing them. How many of us have had expectations or bosses who have expectations like that? How many of us have been bosses who had expectations like that? Especially when expectations change and you don't necessarily communicate those. We have a responsibility for our employees to make sure they understand what is expected of them. And this is just a laundry list of the kind of things you can use with your teams to make sure they know what is expected. The first is the annual review elements. Those are the questions that are going to be on their performance appraisal. I attached a copy of those electronically to the invitation, and I handed out hard copies here. At the very least, you can take these back to your team, distribute copies, and sit down and walk through them. Let them know what they're going to be evaluated on. But setting expectations is bigger than that. We also have the long-views organizational goals. We've talked about being a provider of federal IT services focused around core solutions areas. Does your team know that? Do they know what their role is relative to that objective? Do you have department objectives? I know we do for HR. We have 3 about process, people, and technology. Are your teams engaged? Do they know what your objectives are? Are they aware of the project deliverables and their scope of responsibility within that project? Now, I think all too often we assume that somebody at this level, or someone who's been doing this kind of work for so long, should know what's expected of them. And to a certain extent, that's true. They've got skills, they've got training, but they haven't worked for you before. Or perhaps they haven't worked on this project before, and expectations change. So we have a responsibility to communicate that to our folks. What daily, weekly, and periodic requirements do you have for your employees? Are these unspoken, or have you shared these with them? What about if you have employees who are telecommuting? Have you talked to them about your expectations around how often they come into the office, how often they're online, how accessible they are? Finally, desired communication practices and team and client interaction. Do they know how you like to receive updates? Have you specified to them their role within the team and what that looks like? Have you specified to them how often you expect them to reach out to a contact or client or partner? So all of these, go back one, all of these indicate what success looks like. Have you clearly painted that picture for your teams? Once we have expectations set, we can move on to giving feedback. And again, this is something that should be ongoing. It should be happening throughout the year. But not every comment that we make to our employees is, pearls of wisdom falling from our lips on their ears. Not every comment we make is true feedback. Feedback is meant to reinforce desired behavior, provide guidance and correction, and point them back to the expectation. So to be effective, feedback must be timely, personal, specific, relevant, and focused on behavior. Timely, let me just speak for a moment on that. As you observe your team going through their regular routine and their schedule and doing their regular work, are you giving them praise and coaching and correction along the way, or are you waiting for an opportunity? I've actually heard from PMs who are saying, well, I have feedback to give my team, but I'm waiting till we have an annual review process in place. That is not going to be timely. I have a 5-month-old puppy at home. It's part border collie, part lab. She's really cute, really smart, and we're still working on training her. But sometimes she'll be out in the yard and she'll start digging a hole, and I'll look to her and I'll say, Avery, come, Avery, come. And she'll come running to me, and if I hit her on the nose right then for digging that hole, what is she going to associate that punishment with?
You calling it?
Coming to me. It's not been timely enough. My reinforcement of that was not directly related to the behavior. Now, obviously, our employees aren't pets, but the principles of reinforcement still apply. So the feedback you're giving needs to be timely. It needs to be personal, letting that individual know how their contribution made a difference, rather than something broad and general to the entire team. It needs to be specific. I think very often we've received feedback of, that's good, it's not so good, but we don't understand what elements need work. So let's be specific with the feedback we're giving our employees. It needs to be relevant to the objectives that have been set for them, and it needs to be focused on observable behavior. We're not in the business of psychoanalysis, judging motivations, trying to guess why employees do certain things. What we need to give them feedback is on the behaviors and outcomes that we observe. One final point is you cannot give feedback unless you've set the expectation. So once you have the expectation, the feedback is meant to point them back to that expectation. Otherwise, if you don't set the expectation, they're just guessing. Okay, so we've got formal, we've got informal feedback. We're going to talk first about informal, and for the sake of argument today, just to narrow it down a little bit, we're going to talk about 4 different types: instruction, commendation, coaching, and correction. Now, instruction is meant to give guidance relative to a new assignment or expectation. We've got Dennis joining us. Hey, Dennis and Stanton, come on in.
Well,
Dennis,
just being
Dennis, I'd like to give you some immediate